Is about 10 past 4 here in the afternoon. We're reading the introduction to the Open Church, the book we talked about earlier. Yes, thank you. You're welcome. Introduction. Rome is at any time a city of sudden beauty. At any turn of the street, a pillar, an arch, a fountain is apt to startle one's memory with recollections of forgotten times. All day long one is aware of fountains where water is running, or of walls of narrow brick, or heavy dirty stones which have seen generations of men come and go. Rome sheds the generations of men like so many skins. The silver water continues to flow from the jester's mouth. The ancient cypresses and olives stand calm and untroubled. A man comes, shares their life for a moment, and disappears. One moment, I gotta do something. I just have to send something. Alright, sorry, I just had to send that. Into Rome in the autumn of 1963 came a new generation of such men. 2,300 prelates, old and young, from around the world. They came to write the second chapter of one of the great stories of history. Some were aware of the greatness of the story, some were not. Some seemed to grasp the essential drama, some did not. But the Holy Spirit, who does not need that men should understand, dwelt within these men. Through the meals that they would share together, through the men that they would be seated near in St. Peter's, through the discussions and arguments they would chance to hear, through the state of their stomachs in adjusting to an Italian diet, and of their psyches in adjusting to the uncertain Roman weather, though the troubles that reach them by airmail from their diocese at home, through the troubles that reach them by airmail from their diocese at home, the Holy Spirit would be instructing them. Their every organized action, their every mood, their every new insight and new or reinforced conviction would add a phase, a sentence, a paragraph to the story that would be written through them. What is the story that is being written through these men? We are too close to the text to read it well. We are as apt to be mistaken in our understanding as it has to be even partially correct. In the dialogue between God and history, men who are living very rarely understand the significance of what God has said. They may be loyal to him or disloyal in this way or that. They rarely see where their actions end or what were the real effects of the movements they espoused. As the Council Fathers gathered in Rome in the last week of September 1963, it was difficult to understand the exact meaning and direction of the work that had begun in the first session the year before. As the weeks of October passed and then of November, it became even more difficult to understand. It will take a century perhaps, or 2 centuries, before the event is put in sufficient focus for men to grasp it simply. From our position, while the council is still going on, we grope more in darkness than in light. It is not that we lack for theories about what is going on. It is rather that our theories are inevitably partial and probably partisan. The facts which seem important to observers caught up in the events may prove in the perspective of time to have been insignificant. Small things which occur unobserved may one day prove to have had a great effect upon subsequent history. The historian who ventures out upon these waters before time has given him perspective, runs the danger of bringing back a map no more accurate than Amerigo Vespucci's chart of America. The historian who writes contemporaneously with the event hopes at best to present a tentative, useful map. Where is he uncertain, inaccurate, or even misleading? Later historians who correct his deficiencies should find that they had to go where he went and see as he saw in order to prepare their own accounts. The historian of the present moment stands somewhere between the daily chronicler and the philosopher of history. His theory must serve as a perspective. Because he writes close to the events as they happen, he risks misapprehending and even distorting them. But because he writes while those events are still in the making, he also shares, even if only remotely, in their making, for he offers men who shape that moment a way of understanding what they are about. They may not agree with his interpretation, yet even in reacting against it, they are affected by it. They make of him, in spite of himself, a doer. The obligation of his conscience not to be more partisan than he can help being, and to be faithful rather to the fullness of the moment than to his wishful interpretations of the moment, weighs upon him keenly. In writing a history of the present moment, a man is engaged in struggling against himself. This, then, is the story of the second season of the Second Vatican Council and how it passed. It is a work at once of history and of interpretation. It attempts to record, from one man's point of view, the events of that second session. It attempts to provide some tools for estimating where the Vatican Council is going and what it means. The major tool it uses in interpreting the Council is a philosophical one, an inquiry into the method and the language by which the Council continues to express itself. For centuries, the Church has not appeared to be developing a godlike race. It has not appeared to be forming men to integrity, to courage, to humble charity. It has seemed to many to call men to lead an unreal life, an irrelevant life. Ecclesiastical is now a narrow and pretty term. Many men hate the Church. Many are indifferent to her. In our age, the Church has hardly been threatened by schism, but the young and the intelligent drift steadily away from her. The Church has seemed to be both immobile and unhistorical. No matter how one might try to explain away these appearances with the rhetoric of transcendence and eternity, those with critical minds came to suspect that what one meant was irrelevance. The transcendence seemed all too self-interested. The eternality seemed all too committed to certain temporal forms. The Church seemed hypocritical. This story, then, is the story of an apparently immobile and irrelevant Church finding its way back into the sources of concrete history. The search has not been smooth or unopposed, nor is it yet complete. Other councils have faced the same fundamental problem of renewal and reform and not succeeded. The effort sometimes calls to mind the myth of Sisyphus pushing the boulder to the summit. but never quite lodging it. Perhaps when all is said and done, we shall only have to begin once more rolling the stone up the hill. 3 things make the interpretation of the second session of the Vatican Council especially difficult. The first of these is that it is difficult even to be clear about the interpretation of the first session, held in the fall of 1962. The second difficulty is that the good Pope fell asleep in the Lord in June of 1963. I believe that is John the 23rd. Fell asleep in the Lord in June 1963 and was no longer present in September to confirm the Brethren. They missed his strength. The third difficulty is that has the second session opened, and to some extent even has it closed, the character of the new Pope, Paul VI, was not yet clear. Such is the close relationship between the College of Bishops and the one among them who is their center of unity, that when the character of the one is unclear, the character of the other is obscured as well. In the first part of our history, it will be worth our while to dwell on each of these difficulties in turn. In the 5th chapter, we shall pause to do some harder, more taxing work, to get at the heart of what is variously known as conservative, triumphal, immobile theology. That theology which once dominated in the Roman Catholic Church, and which in the Second Vatican Council began at last to be complemented by other theologies. If we are to understand what it is to live in an open church, we must try hard to come to grips with what exactly it is like to live in a closed church. The non-historical orthodoxy of the last few generations has produced its saints, but it has also presented a withered, wrinkled face to the world. To many, and not only enemies, it has seemed a nightmare church, a sophisticated version of paganism, in which untruth was not immoral if one was loyal to the church's interest, and in which law and logistic forms were served more faithfully than the living God. It seemed to some as though men formed in a system like that which fashioned Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor held influence in the church, men who fundamentally feared freedom and replaced Christian authority with judicial obedience, who knew what was good for their people better than their people did, who treated their people and their fellow bishops outside of Rome like children. For universality, such men seem to substitute conformity to Rome for the new law of charity, Roman law for the morality of the Gospels, the mores of the Vatican for Catholic sensibility, Latin sensibility. Got some people in class saying that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree. Yet it is not on the level of sensibility or law or even morality that the closed church can best be understood. On these levels, passion waxes too hot, and argument is useless. The stronghold of the closed church is its theology, complacent in its possession of the absolute truth, full of fears about other ways of pursuing understanding. The men who love the splendor of papal Rome, the clarity of Roman law, the absoluteness of non-historical theology, are not despicable, mean, or uncouth men. They are men who have tried to live outside of history. They are good men, victims of the system they faithfully and loyally serve. It is not that they are bad. They are only out of touch. If the opening of the church means anything, it means displacing their system from the center of the church. Those who love such a system will continue to take shelter in the church, but they can no longer dominate within the church. Yet long habit and the accustomed taste of power are not quickly discouraged. Those who serve the system of the last few generations are buoyed up by a sense of their own absolute correctness. The conviction that they alone represent the true church endows them with the strength of threatened tigers. The conviction that they alone represent the true church endows them with the strength of threatened tigers. They win the respect of those who admire courage. They no longer convince the believing intelligence. It requires some close, methodical discussion to describe their position and to offer a way out of it. In the chapters of Part 2, we must come to grips with the history of the second session, its debates, its events, its personalities. This history is not clear, but ambiguous. Not all the nobility of intelligence is on one side, nor are the sides very clear. Our aim will be to concentrate on the contrasting conceptions of theology and of theological method, which were regularly at war in the conciliar discussions. In Part 3, we describe the emergence of the bishops of the United States as the coming leaders of the Catholic world. In Part 6, we consider some of the problems of the Church in the modern world, which will come before the Council in the third session, or possibly the fourth, and show how an open theology might attempt to tackle them. In that way, having shown how non-historical orthodoxy is unable to come to grips with history, we take up the challenge of trying another way, through the open church. For the open society, which the moral sense of the world increasingly compels men to try to create, finds resources of energy and insight in an open church. It is the same human hunger to understand, that same root of his dignity and freedom, which propels the open society and drives forward the life of the church. It is that hunger to embrace one's destiny intelligently, which Christ came to fulfill. In opening the church, the Second Vatican Council automatically speaks to the world, just as Pope John, by opening his lips, found the world was his audience. Men listen. The church has only to speak. If she still has the accents of Christ, she will be understood. And that ends the introduction. And part 1, John and Paul, is next. Yes, you're welcome. So we just finished the introduction there. And then John and Paul is next. We'll read these real quick. Something of the prophetic is abroad in our time. Cardinal Montini to the people of Milan. Popes die, councils pass, the Curia remains. Cardinal Siri of Genoa. These, however, are difficulties in the way of improvement, which eminent men are able to overcome, and it is well that they should confront the obstacles which they alone can ultimately remove. Lord Acton. Certainly, if I am obliged to bring religion into after-dinner toasts, I shall drink to the Pope, if you please, still, to conscience first, and to the Pope afterwards, Cardinal Newman, in reply to Gladstone, all human things, given enough time, go badly. Father Gustav Weigel, S.J.